welcome to Saturday Sesh. My name is Trey Reckling. I'm the founder and director of Academy of Cannabis Science, and we're glad to have you back. We do these the first Saturday of every month, and we've been on a little hiatus here. We took a break. We are back and glad to have you today. The intention of these meetings is always to edify ourselves, share our cannabis knowledge, invite people from the industry who are passionate about this industry, and we ask them to share what they're passionate about and why we should likewise be passionate. We're very pleased today to have our special guest, Brendon Roberts. He's the owner and founder of GanjaPapa Solutions Inc. Brendon's a phytopharmaceutical expert with an emphasis on plant agriculture development from the University of Guelph. He's a food production specialist with over 20 years of progressive experience in production, quality control, and marketing a wide variety of fresh foods, vegetables, trees, medicinal, and herbal species. He's completed multiple trainings in quality control, plant production technologies, and customer service to enhance skills and management competencies. So we're so glad Brendon is joining us today originally from the Caribbean, but today from Vancouver. Is that correct?
Well, right now we're in the Central Pacific region in Williams Lake, so it's about 5 hours to the coast of Vancouver, but in the central region of the province of British Columbia, Canada. So thank you for having me on the show today and the podcast so that we can continue to disseminate the information in regards to breaking down the stigma and tearing down the hurdles where cannabis is concerned. And I'm happy of the advocacy that the Academy is doing, and all the wonderful participants and students joining us today. Thank you for your presence and being here. I hope that you can sort out the words between my accent.
It's a great accent. It's and it's so nice that you travel so far to share your knowledge, right? So you bring all this experience to the industry, which is something we terribly need, right? So for so long, we've depended on word of mouth, word of friends, maybe doing things to grow plants that weren't in the plant's best interest, but we thought they were the best things to do. And there is a knowledge base behind growing, right? There is real science to be practiced, and some people are still doing old school head stuff, and that's fine. But we want everybody to have the opportunity to be exposed to a higher level of thinking, no pun intended. And so, Brendon, tell us a little bit, like, how'd you get your start in cannabis?
I say absolutely. There's never been a time in history where we could come together and share information publicly and talk about it within the legal framework. And I started I grew up in a cannabis cartel family. My dad was Rastafarian, and he was also a leading ganja farmer on the islands. And when I was about 5 years, he went to jail out of state in the French territories. And, I decided to stay in school. At that time, I was about 5, probably about a few years later, my mom was murdered. But I enjoy having plants as a way to cope of the trauma from childhood and seeing the operations and stuff from a child, knowing that the family was involved in the trafficking of cannabis, which was illegal back in the late 1980s still and early 1990s. It caught me to be very curious in horticulture and understanding, food production technologies. And first it became almost like a survival tactic. You gotta grow food to continue to extend your surplus of reserve for food security on the island. So I became very good in both the theoretical and practical component of growing and the application of breaching the demonstration to students. I attended the local state college and did an agricultural science program, and later on went on to become a high school teacher, teaching agricultural sciences and the basic for over half a decade. But after a while, I decided I wanted to expand my horizon, and Canada was one of the countries in geopolitical world sort of voicing their opinion on statewide legalization. And I'm like, there you go, there is the country. So I decided to attend Canada's best university for horticultural sciences. That's the University of Guelph in Ontario, the Ontario Agricultural College there. And it pretty much allowed me to leverage my background, leverage my sort of experience and education, and understanding how to bridge the gap of horticulture to people. And that was one of the most fundamental part in becoming an alumni of the university that allowed me to further leverage my skills and allowed me pretty much to break into corporate cannabis across the country, in pretty much virtually every province from coast to coast, from the Pacific down to all the way to the Atlantic in provinces like Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and many different parts and regions as well within the Pacific region. So just a brief intro. It sort of allowed me to become almost as an authority within the cannabis space, and regularly attending and invited to symposiums and workshops, podcasts, and the like, to further help to bring forth the educational piece, the experience, what we know, how can we help businesses, how can we help home growers, how can we help individuals who would like to gain a foothold in the industry, probably develop a career out of it, how can we also assist people to grow better cannabis medicine at home, probably right on their patio, and from patio to table cultivation pretty much. So it offers a wide range in terms of digging through the science and going through the benefits of cannabis to us as a society, as different individuals. We may be battling with different sort of illnesses or wide range of diseases, and cannabis becomes a perfect option, not both medically, but also through therapeutic, recreational use. And how do we do that within our society in a social and responsible manner? So that's why we're here today, so we can continue to share ideas and communicate, and learn a little bit more about cannabis, and essentially help to foster togetherness within communities.
Absolutely. I follow you on LinkedIn, and if you all don't follow Brendon already on LinkedIn, I highly recommend it. LinkedIn is a great, it's probably the best online resource for networking in the cannabis space. High level, professional, and Brendon, you shine a light, right? Your positive attitude shines through in that format. I didn't know about your family history, and so um, I'm sorry, but man, all the kudos to you for the resilience and uh, to have gone through the difficulty and been personally impacted by the war on drugs, and then to keep going and say, hey, no, people need to know, and I'm gonna use science to empower my message and share this message, and and help people to not just grow the plant but grow themselves. And the way you talk about the plant reflects the true spirit of the plant, right? We talk to students who are looking for careers in this industry, and something we frequently say is ask them, do the people you want to work with reflect the true spirit of the plant? And I just want to recognize you for um, that comes through with you, right? As you talk about your passion and what you do. So thank you for modeling that.
You're most welcome. I'm of the opinion that no woman, man, child, or human being should be left behind in this plant medicine development global initiative or global green economy. And it's all about building resilient communities through plant medicine development or horticulture, and cannabis falls perfectly into that framework as a phytopharmaceutical, that has the power of changing, well, transforming, touching lives, and enhancing life, improving the outcome of life itself. Numerous people suffer from anxiety, depression, um, stress, and rheumatism, and cannabis pretty much provides relief for a number of people that suffer with those symptoms. And definitely, while the world has shifted more into a virtual portal, um, we have more communities coming together online, but we are pretty still new to that as human beings in our nature, as it causes shifts and changes within our societies. So obviously, the level of probably stress, because we are social creatures and animals by nature, we're not able to interact with each other lots in person anymore, in groups and large gatherings. So we come into an era, and we saw that through the pandemic, when everybody had to pretty much quarantine for quite a substantial amount of time, that cannabis usage among adults and even senior citizens within North America and Europe also increased at significant levels in terms of consumption and sales. So we know that cannabis has a place and right to stay within our society. And it's about understanding how that the different ways that we can cultivate and adopt the different uses and properties that can essentially create powerful, transformative changes within our families and our personal lives, and helping to sort of become in tune as well with our own selves and nature, and a substitute, as opposed to probably detrimental sort of drugs and probably consumption excessively of alcohol and the whatnot. So, happy to be here again to, share my side of the story and an experience. And I hope that it is very beneficial for the participants and the viewers and listeners, not only in the Western part of North America, but throughout the various different states that are also hesitant in coming on board with legalization and helping to arm people or empower people with the opportunity to cope and heal themselves with whatever they're going through, probably, and use cannabis as an answer, if it can be an answer to their lives in a meaningful way.
Absolutely, and you're so right to give a shout out to cannabis as something to help that helped us helped many communities deal with the stress of COVID, right? Deal with the stress of lockdown and isolation, and the timing on that was probably more than coincidence, right? That more was available to people legally than had ever been or had been for a long, long time, and then this thing happened in the world, and there was probably a reason for that. So thanks for that shout out. Because that's absolutely right. If you don't mind, what I'd like to change gears a little bit and ask you, since you train horticulturalists and you work with farmers, I imagine you see a lot of farmers or would-be farmers come to you with stars in their eyes, with this green rush kind of thing. I'm going to get rich growing weed, and I can grow potatoes, but if I can grow weed, I'm going to make this much per pound instead of 45 cents per pound that I make on potatoes. And so, um, and we both know a lot of people have been burned because they come in without enough information or without a kind of a reality check on what it's going to mean to grow this crop. What are some things that you wish more people, and I know this is a big question, but what are a couple things you wish more people in that situation were aware of in the industry as far as the dynamics of the economics of growing this crop?
100%. It's a very huge question, and it encompasses, many or broad range of spectrum. In networking with farmers in both Canada, in Washington State, Oregon, Tennessee, California, what I have noticed is that even one of the aspects of cannabis, which is hemp and also grown as CBD, with a lower percentage, less than 0.3% of THC, that offer different medicinal sort of benefit for a numerous range of product lines. So farmers thought it would be a sort of rejuvenated gold rush. And a lot of them invested multi-million dollars into their lands and equipment and growing hundreds of acres. And what happened is that a number of them quickly realized that when it comes for harvest, there were not enough processing facilities, because it's a pretty relatively sort of new industry gearing up itself, and the infrastructure wasn't really there at the time to support what farmers thought that they would have made extensive sums of monies from. And they were left with spending millions of dollars, and a lot of their produce or product end up rotting in totes on the outside. Sometimes you need huge commercial cold storage facility, and this also takes hundreds of thousands of dollars to create, so that you can properly store the crop and probably use it as extraction and throw it into processing and different multiple product lines. And seeing that majority of the industry and individuals, farmers, business owners were not there yet, they suffered substantial losses. A number of farmers even committed suicide with an attempt to keep the lands in their family names and clear off the huge debts that amass. So it wasn't a pretty sight, and we probably may not hear lots of that within mainstream media. But even in looking at cannabis grown for high THC, which is sort of marijuana, we had multiple large corporations as well losing billions of dollars, because we thought, well, large big buildings would have created that sort of competitive corporate multi-conglomerate sort of structure. And in testing out the early phases, we realized why cannabis culture has always remained sort of covert but small, in that sense, to accommodate, because smaller structures create more control conditions for better quality, and you had quite huge variables and predisposing factors to deal with at a cultivation level with huge and big scale facilities that majority of growers who were not open to large scale commercial ag or even cannabis farming at that magnitude definitely suffered of the brunt of seeing a lot of crop failures, seeing a lot of monies that probably the North American population invested in the stock market dwindled. And we've seen a lot of closures and merges, and so it's become quite some sort of difficult part within the industry. But it's with every new industry, this is very similar, and we just have to get past this sort of hurdle. But we still have a lot of, I would say, in growing, some of the constraints that I have seen that farmers probably end up doing a little bit more than they should. I would say they overwater their plants,
Hmm.
and overwatering the plants can lead to a number of diseases, illnesses, and some even slow down the plant's metabolism, because cannabis is not really one of the plants that what I call that enjoys wet feet.
Right.
Yeah, picture your foot in soaking in the the women go for their pedicures, but their feet only soak for quite so long before they can get their medicure done. And it's as a cannabis plant, you don't want your roots to be constantly immersed within the water all the time. It provides different levels of quality control. So it's easier for beginners that normally use pot and soil, or cocoa as a different medium or substrate. Although there are advanced science facilities who also grow in aquaculture. So there is also a farm down in Nova Scotia that has an aquaculture cannabis program where they have freshwater fish like tilapias, and the waste from the fish feeds the cannabis plant. So, but it's not that very common across the country. You tend to find more of probably either hydroponic systems, which we call drain to waste systems, or recirculatory hydroponic systems as well. And those, once contamination level is in the nutrient solution, you can have catastrophic um, damages, because all the plants are exposed to the similar risks without being able to isolate and control the quality from that level. So based on the cultivation standard and system that is chosen can really make or break you. But as a home grower, definitely if you can grow tomatoes, or even a pot with soil and mixture of probably pen manure. All these things can help enrich the soil profile and provide the microbial organisms to pretty much help your plant to grow and develop and blossom into the bountiful harvest that everybody tends to look for at the end of the cycle.
And thanks for calling out boy, that's a rich answer, for calling out a few things. For one, the wet feet, right? Because some people, in an attempt to take really good care of their plants, they don't want their plants to ever be thirsty. And there's some value in a little bit of struggle, right? Because that's what, just like they say, wind creates strong roots, right? And so some people think if they protect their cannabis plants from all challenges, that the plant will be stronger, and quite the opposite can be true. And then also talking about the challenges of hydroponics, because some people, for whatever reason, they hear about hydro grow and this and that, and it's some fine hydro, and don't understand the challenge of cross contamination and how unforgiving hydroponic grow could be, especially for a beginner. And so we typically encourage people, just think soil. You'll never be as good as nature, but try to get some good living soil, try to get some good living nutrients, or some nutrients that aren't necessarily salt based. We're encouraging people to think about carbon based nutrients. um, what are there any other tips? And I know this is a big question too, but are other simple tips that you find yourself encouraging our patio farmer to keep in mind, in addition to, like, for instance, just on your starts? I know some people really believe in clones just because it's a safe bet if you can get clean clones. Other people say, hey, I want to do seeds, or I want to do feminized seeds, or even feminized autoflowers. What's your bias in that? If I'm a brand new grower, where are you going to try to point me?
I would say the best option for a brand new grower would be feminized sort of autoflower seeds. It's an easy option. You can easily, just like you know, May long weekend, before May long weekend, you can transplant your seedlings, get them going in March from the inside. If you have a little tent, or some people even put it close to their window with a little light over it, you keep it going in the sort of early spring, and by May long weekend, you could get it transplanted out probably on your patio. And because we say May long weekend, we tend to have greater levels where the weather tends to hold up in terms of its nighttime warmth and probably its daytime highs. So it provides more reasonable condition for the plant to thrive. And yeah, by the time it dips into the summer and you go with the lovely summer solstice, the good thing about autoflowers is that it doesn't wait until the season change to begin to flower. With photoperiodism, what we call almost like the shortened day length time, which help to initiate flowering in certain crops. As the time gets shorter, or the day length gets shorter, it tend to trigger the plant to flower. And cannabis, in terms of if you're planting a clone, it would tend to trigger to flower probably in late August, early September would be its sort of beginning, because that's when the time and the sunsets are a lot earlier. So with the reduced lighting, you tend to get flowering. But with the auto flowers, it will just happen naturally. The yield from the auto flowers are also very reasonable and good. The THC and properties are all also there as well. So it provides the typical makeup of the journey, which I see, the start, the patience after the start, because you got to care for it. And after you've gone through that process, then you have the accomplishment at the end. So once you connect all the dots together, it's relatively easy to see what a cycle looks like with the auto flowers, and then from there you can build your strength, and probably you can decide to go now onto clones later on, and go now probably onto different advanced breeds, and or go now in probably doing your own sort of breeding, if that is something you're interested in, and figuring out the male plants from the female plants and different sexes from the plant, and how to isolate them and prevent probably fertilization, and in that regard, it helps you to become a more rounded sort of farmer and sort of student in the area. But I would definitely say autoflowers, you will get that rewarding experience, and it probably might take very little care of you, from you. in that regard, rather than watering it, providing it with nutrients, and providing it with a good stable environment where it has sunshine and it can photosynthesize and produce manufacture food. And as you said, one of the um, initial thought is that farmers feel, well, we can always overwater, and there might not be an issue. But I always say that in order to build character within the plants, to make them resilient. And that philosophy stems almost like us as human beings. The more that we go through, the stronger that we get, the more wise that we get, the more wisdom we acquire, the more it helps to shape and build us to face new challenges and to face the world. And the same philosophy that I apply to the plants. If you give them everything that they need when they want it and when they demand it all the time, then you're providing them so much of a comfortable space where they feel themselves, they will even feel entitled. So you gotta give them a little bit of struggle so that they can see, you know what, wow. And what that does is that it also increases the medicinal content of the plant, especially through controlled drought stress. The cannabinoids of the University of Guelph has research that up to 15% increase in controlled drought stress cannabinoids, and that's huge. And we knew already that in other phytopharmaceutical plants, so for example, basil, oregano, lavender, and all these other similar plants that we find the same terpenes in as cannabis, that we also employ drought stress on those. Even crops like spices, cinnamon and nutmeg, in order to bring out the rich, flavorful profiles. These are all crops that we use the same techniques, even grapes, to get the water content to be reduced and the sucrose content to be increased or elevated. We tend to apply that same methodology. So cannabis is a plant that a lot of exploration is still unknown and new. And what I have found is that through that drought stress control, you also have specific terpenes that may increase in larger numbers in different genetic and phenotype makeup. So it's quite interesting.
It's very interesting. And thanks for that about the spices, because I didn't know that. I was aware, of course, of how that impacts cannabis, but it's fascinating and it makes all the sense. The way you keep speaking about cannabis, if you all notice, is as a sentient being, right? As a being with needs, with personality, with character, as you say. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. That just like you say, if we provide everything to it, we don't want to make it suffer, but we want to make it work, right? And just in nature, just like happens in other situations where there seems to be um, a lack of opportunity, when it starts flowering and it's worried it's not going to get pollinated, it's going to push those terpenes to attract the pollinators. And so we have to always kind of try to stay in the mind, so to speak, of the plant, and keep that in mind. So this is all fascinating, and I've got so many more questions, but I want to make sure other people have an opportunity to ask questions of you too, because I'm going to just keep on if I don't stop for a sec. So let me ask folks on the call, what questions do you have? Because y'all know me, I will keep on. And I'm fine keeping on. James, what you got?
Well, far be it to me. I'm usually one to just have all kinds of questions and things to say, but I'm just kind of speechless. I'm just trying to absorb everything, partially from this gentleman's history, his life, just his his little dip into his life story that we've been able to absorb, because there's lots of background there, and what he's been able to provide of his education and what have you, and just trying to absorb that. Just today, I'm kind of halfway speechless, and that's a rarity. I mean, other than me rambling at the moment. Okay, I give. I'm a person who's really into aquaponics, and I've just put my first batch of regular plants into it. I haven't put any cannabis plants into it, but I'm always looking for advice for doing that. I am just wanting to start out small with growing something in my little home garden. So any advice, is always welcome. But I'm just, wow. I love your educational background. I would love to know more about some of the trees and spices like you were talking about. Wow, that's a lot to absorb. I love it.
Good.
You're most welcome, James. In terms of your aquaponic project, I would say always monitor your electrical conductivity and your pH. So these are the two most important elements within aquaponics. You also always want your pH to remain within the range of, anywhere from 5.5 to 6.5 or 6.4. You don't really want to encompass that range, because that is the range where most plant within the pH scale, a little bit on the slightly acidic side, can
Right.
be able to uptake a lot of the nutrients and elements that they need from the water, in order to supply them through the xylem vessels and continue to carry out the various functions in the plant to enable photosynthesis. So always have your pH pen on you
Oh yeah,
daily.
I've got a pH meter dipper pen. I've got a electric conductivity pen, and dissolved solids pen. I got test strips, test me, all that stuff. I used to design and install aquariums as a business, so I do
Nice.
have a bit of background knowledge there. It's extremely important, the water quality for anything, plants, fish, anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do appreciate you. The range. The range is a good one. I'll write that down.
Yeah, the range is a good one for it. And also, you would know that um, the calibration of the equipments, you also would have to come up with your own, whether you're gonna do it twice a week or once a week, to make sure that your pens are always calibrated so that you have a proper or more accurate reading where it doesn't really throw you off. And you could see something happening to your plants and you might not ascertain what's the problem. But if your equipment is out of calibration, or there is not probably a standard operating procedure to ensure that it is calibrated regularly so that you can be on top of your grow, whether you're starting off your plants, it could be lettuce or normal vegetable seedlings. All these are definitely plants that you could experiment and play with within your aquaponic setup.
Yep, that's what I just dropped into the main grow base, and 2 days ago was a bunch of different lettuces, some kale, a couple other different things like that. About 12 plants, small ones, and yeah, I check my pens against my dip tests regularly, and it also, I have my little actual packets and everything that the pens comes with, and I always order more. So definitely check.
And
Recalibrate.
another thing you can also implement to help you cross-check and cross-reference.
Please.
You know the little pool indicator tests to test outdoor pools.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you get a little one, you can also verify your pen because you have a different color that you can look at and ensure that it remains within the range of the pH that you actually need, or the pH your pen is telling you actually corresponds with the accurate pH of the water. So
Good idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. And so often we'll talk to students about tools because some of these tools are quite inexpensive, to have a little hydrometer to be able to stick in your soil and say, hey, like when you talk about wet feet, that was a problem I had. I was always early on too careful and made sure I was watering them way too much. And then when I got my soil meter years ago, I was like, it can wait. They're telling me they're because you can actually, people don't realize you can drown a plant. And so this is all, and so great about verifying that your tools are actually working, right? That your tools are continuing to work. Let me ask you this: you continue to talk about cannabis as a medicine, and I think we as an industry can't forget one. That's its highest one of its highest purposes, right, is to help us as a medicine, as is to help us commune, I think, which is related to medicine. But could you talk to us a little bit about the challenge of, you're working with a farmer, and the farmer has found a cultivar, and just as importantly, the patient has found a cultivar that works for their condition, right? And Western medicine, we're used to saying, hey, I know I can use this medicine and it's worked for me at this dosage. Well, sometimes happens with cannabis, even that same, if it's Durban poison from crop to crop is going to be different, or even within a crop. So could you talk to us a little bit about the challenge of creating a consistent product where, as a chemovar, it's still in a range where it doesn't have that great fluctuation? How hard is that as a farmer, and what are some of the things you ask farmers to consider when trying to do that?
Oh, it's very difficult. It's one of the plagues within the legal framework of the industry. Um, Inconsistencies, irregularities within growing, and the environment can pop up at any minute. If you're in the outdoors, you probably have no control over the environment. If it's a hot day out here in the Pacific and it's 30 and above, 40 hit to 40 degrees, then your plants are going to feel the brunt of that. Within the greenhouses, you may have some form of climate control that can help alleviate a lot of the um, exogenous shocks from the externalities. But when you really look at indoor, you have more of a masterful control on the inside. But if you're too big, you also fall prey to the vulnerability of not being able to have all the environment, and minimizing the hot and cool spots or environment that may pop up within the larger environment of the room. So I always advocate smaller is always better, or small to medium scale rooms where the equipment can be properly sized for these rooms. Definitely gives you more or greater degree of control, and almost with systematic, automated, algorithmic apparatus to help keep that desirable range. So you can see almost like a graph-like consistent pattern. If it has to have a high and a low, then it falls within that acceptable temperature. It falls within the acceptable humidity. It falls also within the acceptable light range. It's important that you also measure your light source, and once it falls within the acceptable nutrient range, in holding the nutrient element ratios needed at different stages of growth and development, then you have almost a complete sort of crop steering program where you can now ultimately guide the crop and steer it into the direction that it needs to go to in order to provide you with high quality medicine and consistent. And then you can sort of replicate those patterns and do it over and over again with the use of almost AI technology in today's which is popping up in today's world now. So with future down the line, I can see a lot of the facilities becoming more automated with more science and research to help pretty much guide the production and minimize a lot of the errors humans may also make within the production that can be sort of catastrophic, because you're talking about you could be losing multi-millions dollars within one crop satisfactorily going down, and that could lead to a massive cash halt or slowdown or stagnation for small businesses, medium businesses, and even large businesses alike. So it takes a fine blueprint to also understand the responsiveness to the plant needs. You know, I always say that the plants speak to us like any other living thing. We just have to be aware what they are looking for and what they need when they communicate to us, because they don't necessarily have mouths to speak, but they do give us some sort of telltale signs that they require particular nutrients if they're deficient in certain areas. They also show through various ways that they might be feeling ill and might need a boost within their own immune system, and we have to respond to sort of strengthen those capacities, almost like a patient at the hospital. So we can see the progression now that yes, that can be now a fully discharged patient, and you can keep them on the sort of regimented either diet or medication, because you saw a tremendous improvement which help with their overall well-being. So all these are qualitative and quantitative factors that can be put into the mix to help develop what I say quality consistent outcomes, because we really want to hone in on the outcomes. If we can get the outcomes consistent enough, it helps patients that are suffering from cancer, and we know that cannabis has medical properties that can suppress cancer. Patients that are suffering from insomnia, you might not be able to sleep well at night, and cannabis, certain strains might be able to offer you relief and a good night rest. Patients that might be suffering with anxiety, stress, depression, and even fatigue. So there are strains which assist tremendously in combating a lot of or with anti-suppressant capabilities that can suppress anxiety and depression and provide therapeutic relief. We also have, in terms of looking at your diet, if you lack of appetite and you feel, well, you don't have appetite to adequately nourish your body, especially patients that normally who have going through chemotherapy and cancer treatment, you tend to be down in appetite as well. You tend to have cannabis strains which also help and assist with building appetite and helping to nourish your body properly, where it can function and your endocrine system can sort of strengthen, as well as your lymphatic system. So it's all connected as a medicine that has the properties to really to heal. And back then there was a stigma, and right now we have seen that more people, even in North America, has come to terms with the acceptance of cannabis in modern day medicine, which makes it almost like an icon in today's era, and it continues to build momentum and popularity, not domestically only here in North America, but in Europe, in Latin America, in South America, in the Caribbean region, in Africa, in Southeast Asia. So it's something that connects us globally, and each culture, it's also important to note that each culture has various ways of procuring these plant medicines through historical accord or perspectives. And they will vary from each geographical location. So that's what makes us unique and bringing the level of diversity through all the global culture and forming almost like a heritage that can stand the test of time and be sustainable even for future generations that can look up to the plant as a mecca for medical treatment and breakthrough in science for treating common illnesses and even mental health today. We have never seen case by case where mental health has been so on the rise like today in modern times. And cannabis comes in appropriately to even help to suppress mental health disorders and helping people cope with as a coping mechanism for suffering from some of these illnesses. And bear in mind, sometimes these are no fault of ours and no fault of any individual, but if there are ways and means of helping to combat what they may be going through, we can see that cannabis can be offered as a refuge in today's society, which can help to change lives, transform lives for the better, for the good. And that's why it's important that we continue doing podcasts such as these with the Science Academy, because we would like to continue to echo the sentiments of joining voices, hearts, hands, and minds, for the greater good and for circumnavigating for collective and equitable outcomes. And this is why some of the podcasts is important to provide the dissemination of the information to individuals in needs. Sometimes our grandparents might be suffering from arthritis and rheumatism, and cannabis can be used as a rub. Even the male plant and the roots has properties where, as a young man, cannabis, the roots, I used to make tea out of it, and it cured my asthma. And today I no longer have asthma, because of the roots of the male cannabis plant. And there is lots left to know what are the special ingredients and properties that lies in the plant on a whole. When you look at a modern breakdown, we have over 50,000 uses of cannabis that can replace so many harmful and unsustainable industries, from creating rope, creating textile, creating food. It's so unique, and even replacing harmful drugs. It's so unique in its own unique makeup that it can create almost a global revolution. The reduction of use of plastic and creating fiber and materials. So it provides a perfect solution for building a more sustainable, climate-friendly era. However, these things are not cheap, and with the stigma cannabis had to endure for many centuries, we have to continue to advocate and break down these hurdles and barriers so that it can gain more momentum and global acceptance, while other small island developing states and countries come on board. And probably, also watching North America as a model to help them develop further plant medicine initiatives and industries within their neck of the woods, whether internationally, and here in rural communities, to further help, not only building a medicinal program, but developing economic capabilities,
Right.
providing capacities within the local rural populations that can further help to aid and abet the growing cannabis industry. There are so many ways we look at gender and cannabis development. There are lots of farm gate stores that are opening all across the country, and I normally say, women are more inviting being the store managers, and sometimes men has to learn to take a back seat and allow them to be able to mingle and help disseminate their own information, because they have the natural feel for that. Sometimes both men and women love cultivation. I have seen numbers where sometimes even in trimming, there are higher women performing groups of trimmers, because they are more focused and can do rapid, in terms of, rather than looking at different stuff, we can look at how we include gender roles that can further help and push where various individuals have specific interests. When we look at in terms of access and equal access of cannabis to various communities, I always tell people, I know it's unpopular opinion, but we cannot leave out the LGBTQ plus community. Sometimes they are more challenged mentally, they are more challenged probably emotionally, and cannabis is one of the plants that can also assist them going through with different struggles, and therefore we should definitely embrace them and having equal rights and opportunities for them to access cannabis. I also
Absolutely.
normally speak about that we should not forget senior citizens. They are a very vulnerable group within our society, and in their twilight years, they are the group who would be needing more medical attention. And we need to see how we can incorporate cannabis within the curriculums and within the medical field and the science field, as well as the regulations and act, to make sure that there is provisions for our elderly citizens.
Absolutely.
We should not leave out women in cannabis and women and cannabis. When I speak to women across North America, they also tell me, well, Brendon, they have been facing things like misogyny in the industry. Women are not getting sort of castigated from executive roles in male-dominated companies. Women have also spoken to me about not getting equal pay for having the same or more experience as their male counterparts. They have also spoke to me about the industry being mainly male dominated and almost like a boys club. They
Absolutely.
they have voiced concerns about, they wanting to help and make progressive changes, and everywhere we see women in development, big data has shown that women has been able to move the GDP and the gross national product at considerable and exponential rates. And so therefore, yeah, I support the inclusivity of women 100% as well in the industry. And, we look for inclusiveness, but also still looking as well of environmental stewardship within creating economic cultivation businesses and retail outlets and other avenues of economic endeavors. We should not forget about our environment and planet Earth. Not much of us might be able to book a ticket on on one of the spacecraft to go out to space, either on Elon's or on Jeff's. So we definitely have to protect Earth and be conscientious of the fact that, yes, we cannot gain an industry and lose our environment.
Absolutely. And there's so much in that answer, Brendon. Thanks for see your passion just shines through. And I think I'm so happy that so many people from coast to coast in North America are getting to experience you. From your call outs about marginalized and impacted communities, smaller countries that need to have equitable access to not just the ability to grow, but to markets and to access economic benefits of this, the challenges faced by the GLBTQ community and the um, long time systemic oppression and trauma caused not just to their community, but of course to communities of color who've been impacted by the law. Um, like you say, this is one of the first times we've had a new industry where women should be able to start. Women, all people should be able to start on the same line together. We're not seeing that. You know, a lot of white men still dominating this field, and like you said, a lot of the patriarchy, you know, running these companies, and so
And we should also, without tripping you in, also be cognizant of the fact of Native Americans and
absolutely.
communities of color, um, and Hispanic societies. Because when we look at the big data within North America, these were predominantly the heavy hit communities on the war on drugs.
Right?
And today they represent probably less than 2 to 5% of ownership or equity within the market. So to create a growing awareness where it embraces all and we can celebrate all. And not only that too, even minority Caucasian communities, they have also been marginalized, oppressed and left out. And we can leave out all groups and everybody. We want to try to fall under one umbrella so that we can understand well moving forward as a global community and domestic community that it's almost like a social justice movement, that helps to bring
Absolutely.
to the table the forefront issues that may be on the burners that affects daily lives and homes.
For sure. And like we say, the cannabis community is the most diverse community you can belong to, right? And if we're going to reflect the spirit of the plant, as you, sir, absolutely do, um, we have to look out for everybody, you know, not just folks that look like us or think like us or live where we do. Um, and so that's part of our responsibility in this. And we have power as consumers, you know, by patronizing and spending our money with people whose values that we believe in, people who um, patronizing minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. Where you shop and where you spend your dollars matter. So I know we're going over today, but there's so much I want to talk to you about, and I hope. And I know Sarah had a question about integrated pest management. But we're going to hold off because I really hope we can get you back at some point. I'll talk to you offline. But today has been a joy, and like I said, I'm just so excited to talk to you, and I know there's so much more you have to share because you it's very a lot of layered information you shared today, and all of it with passion and a true spirit, like I said, representing the plant. um and I thank you for that. Thanks for coming and sharing your knowledge and your passion, and that's certainly what we try to do in these sessions. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're most welcome. I mean, of course, we can continue as a series of having those discourse, and because there are broad ranges of topics that provides different strategic enlightenment to specific areas that we will not always be able to fully cover in just a few settings, you know. But serious question on integrated pest management. I would say one of my favorite components of integrated pest management, seeing that I'm sort of like a naturalist and or have been a herbalist, would be that the use of biological predators to feed on harmful organisms. So, for example, within cannabis, we would use the application of probably ladybugs to eat aphids, or within the indoors, you tend to use bugs such as Oreos and Swarovskis, which definitely provide those parasitic wasps, provide the same sort of effectiveness as using ladybugs to sort of arrest harmful bugs. But that would be one of the key areas. I also like sanitation. It's also a cultural practice that we want to keep our area almost sterile and clean if we can, because we can have contaminants and opportunistic pathogens from either the environment, which could be viruses, fungus, could be airborne. It could be on your walls, it could be on the tables or the floor. So you want to make sure that you maintain a nice sterile environment and upkeep, and do your record keepings. If you're at least cleaning once a week or twice a week, and you come up with a system that keeps your area with its hygienic purposes in mind, that's also one of the pluses. We also have stuff like you can physically do within the integrated pest management. So you see a leaf that probably might be defected or comes with a spore of probably a powdery mildew or something that you see very funny that should not be there, and it's only on one leaf or a few leaves as opposed to the rest of the plant. Go ahead and remove it. You know, that's you physically, trying to your best to prevent the spread. And always, before probably touching the plants, I always recommend, spraying your hands or your gloves with iso alcohol. Make sure that no contaminants are there, and it helps that you're not transferring pathogen that probably could be, or germs on your hands, to the plant, or probably create an accidental wound. Then probably if your fingernails is not clipped, probably debris or stuff could enter into the gene pool of the plant that could lead to other diseases. So being careful, and if none of those are not really working for you, I normally tell people the last resort would be approved chemicals within the cannabis legal space and food industry space that are out there. And always check your various state guidelines, because they may vary from state to state, or if you're in Canada, from well, we're more federally across the board, so we'll be able to use pretty much the same sort of pesticide approved by Health Canada within every province. So it does definitely, within the integrated pest management system, provide the core competencies that can help combat diseases, because your environment as well is almost your number one weapon in your arsenal. So you want to ensure that it's properly maintained. You want to ensure that the relative humidity and temperature corresponds nicely, so that we form an optimal, what we call vapor pressure deficit, or VPD, which is sort of the relationship between temperature and humidity that affects the transpiration rate of the plant. So if it is too high, then your plant transpires a lot. Its ability to conserve water, or will be sort of, water would be leaving at a quicker rate, and so too what we call the evapotranspiration rate, the rate at which water will leave the growing media. So you want to fall within a range where it can access nutrients at a comfortable rate that balances off nicely. So it promotes greater growth and nourishment for the key areas that we need in the different phases and within the crop cycle, and also nutrient analysis and fertigation is important to know, to combat a healthy integrated pest management system, because we know as humans, health is number one. If we're healthy, our immune system can fight off a lot of the opportunistic threats, and the same methodology with living things. It encompasses the realm of plants as well. If it has a robust immune system, it will be able to fight off a lot of the challenges that it may face. So therefore, ensuring that it is adequately fed and all 18 elements needed to grow are predominantly there and present, including the breakdown. We have macronutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. We have micronutrients, which we have boron, zinc, iron, um, copper, and a number of different elements. We have secondary nutrients as well, like calcium, magnesium, sulfur. So these all provide a great range of diversity for feeding the plant's metabolic rate and accelerating the rate of photosynthesis that nourishes every aspect and development perspective of the plant, so that you can have a bountiful harvest. And that's one thing for James as well to look out for within the aquaponics system, because having nutrient probably analysis to know what's constantly in circulation in the water is very paramount. It's because you really don't want to have shortages of nutrients that cannot be made available to the plant, because then it's gonna pop up a lot of nutritional deficiencies that has to be sort of auto corrected, and it can really cause downturns within larger aquaponics hydroponic systems.
There is so much to know, and 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 you got so much to share. Thanks for that, and thanks for coming back around talking about immune system, because that prevention of having a pest problem is a huge part of the equation. And so, like you said, if our plants can be healthy and robust and fend off just like they do in nature, fend off the occasional pest, then they can take care of themselves without a lot of intervention from us or before things get out of control. Um, Thank you so much today. We really appreciate it. Thanks for spending extra time with us. And thank you all for joining us today. We will get this edited and up on our YouTube channel. Um, like I said, this is fantastic. And I hope the beginning of several discussions with you. But stay warm. Hope you all get some sun there in Canada that you might not be getting right now. And wish you the best as you continue to travel and teach and help people get better at this art of growing cannabis.
Thank you a lot. I really appreciate coming on the podcast today, and it's all about keeping it traditional, doing it sustainable, and cannabis culture is a culture that sorts of opens us with invited arms. Doesn't matter from what walk of life that you may come from, you're accepted within the cannabis culture and cannabis community. And, and I say that without prejudice. That's just how cannabis culture sort of operates. And yes, we may still fight different stigmas, but continuing to educate the public will allow us in the long run to triumph and bring in changes to people who actually need it. So it's actually been a blessing here to further enlighten and share my aspect of cannabis horticulture and overall cannabis subject, because I also normally tell people that the horticultural aspect of cannabis is both science and an art. So you have both horticultural sciences and social sciences associated with that, because with cannabis, it's not only about the plant, But with cannabis communities, there will or agrarian communities who normally regularly planted cannabis, you also have the social aspect that took place afterwards. And that's why the SESH program here provides a perfect opportunity for interacting, communicating, collaborating and networking. And I'm happy and proud to be part of that social network.
Well, and we're happy and proud to have you as to be able to call you a friend, to certainly be able to appreciate your time today. I put your LinkedIn profile link in the chat, and I strongly encourage you all to follow Brendon on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed his lecture and our time spent today as much as I did, continue to follow his work, because as you see, he's got a lot to share, a lot that didn't fit into our time constraints today. But you're going to be better for it. So make sure to follow him. Thank you all so much and have a nice weekend.